What's up? Welcome to the episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287, also on LinkedIn where I post more content, the website, dsmsports.net, and check out the podcast on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Really cool show for you guys today. I enjoyed a great conversation about sponsorship, social media and sponsorship, how brands think about it, how athletes can be thinking about it. My guest on the podcast today is Ishveen Jolly. She is co-founder and CEO of Open Sponsorship. It's that's a platform that connects brands and athletes across the board. A really interesting conversation here with the CEO of that company. Again, going great into sponsorship. If you work in digital, social, brand, agency, there will be some good insights in here for you. So here she is, Ishveen Jolly of Open Sponsorship. Right back with today's guest, and I'm so psyched to pick her brain. We're going to have an awesome discussion today, just geeking out about sports business, about sponsorship, about everything in between. My guest on the podcast today is Ishveen Jolly. She is co-founder and CEO of Open Sponsorship. And welcome to the podcast today, Ishveen.
Thanks so much for having me, Neil.
So psyched to learn from you. You are behind a really cool platform and really in a space that is continuing to grow and evolve every day, every year. Now we have NIL and every athlete's being able to monetize, and sports sponsorship is ever dynamic, ever evolving, ever growing. But before we get into the meat of our discussion and get into the weeds of things, we want to hear about you. You have a really cool background, and you've obviously now built a company. So tell us about your background, your stops along the way, and any tips for folks that want to try to do what you do.
Oh, thanks. So I started in sports back in, like 2009 when I joined I actually moved to India and became a sports agent there, doing like shirt front deals and sponsorship deals for a cricket team. And fell in love with sponsorship. I thought, what a wonderful form of marketing. And kind of fast forward, moved to America and realized that there was like this opportunity for, what we called at that time, like the Airbnb of sports sponsorship. So somewhere that brands and rights holders, so that could be athletes, teams, events, could basically connect. And fast forward another 8 years to where we are today, and I'd say it's massively evolved to the point that our biggest focus is athletes of all of them, and really the rise of influencer marketing led to that. We have 19,000 athletes on the platform now, maybe 20 by the time this launches, and we've done loads of deals, worked for brands as big as like a Walmart or a JD Sports, a FanDuel. So it's been an epic journey to get to where we are.
Heck yeah. So I want to back up a little bit. So you started out in the sports agency world. So I guess, were you interested in sports business when you were in school? I think you played sports as well, did you? I want to back up a little bit.
Yeah, to be honest, I played a lot of sports growing up. Like sports was my absolute passion to play, more so to watch. And then, so I was really keen student athlete. And then I graduated and I was a management consultant. So, frankly, back then I studied at Oxford. No one was really talking about a career in sports. It wasn't even a thing I knew you could do. England is not the best for like sports courses or things like that. So I didn't even know it was an option. And then when I found out, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I would love to marry my passion for sports with my profession. And so that's kind of what led me to starting the job.
Yeah. And I guess, like, what was your understanding and perspective for athlete sponsorship and just athlete marketing in general? I mean, coming from, we grew up here, and as young as high school even, or certainly in college sports is so big in the States and it's not really big elsewhere. So like, when you thought about just athlete marketing and athletes who were big, like was it a lot smaller of a pool in the UK and Europe? And I guess, like, what was the nature of just sports marketing in terms of like who it affected and how far down the sort of the totem pole it went?
Yeah, I think growing up, I wasn't really aware of like sports marketing that much. Maybe I was quite young, and I think as you said, like, it was less athlete driven. So obviously it was like Manchester United having lots of sponsors. And so when I went to India, I didn't really know the world of sports marketing. I didn't have any clue what it meant. And I think what really appealed to me was like the idea of like money can't buy experiences. So, one of my team actually this weekend was at a event with David Taylor, the USA wrestler. And she was like, we were talking about functional stuff to do with the deal. And like kids were going wild, like trying to take pictures and get his autographs. And she's like, he's having a normal conversation while he's signing like 20 autographs. And I think that you can't really replicate that. Like, and you might not be a fan as much, or you might not really know who David Taylor is, or you might not be into wrestling, but it appeals to someone. And when you work in it and you see that, it's pretty powerful to connect your brand with a fan base via someone that they absolutely adore.
Yeah. And do you find, just from like a bird's eye view, I guess, like, are we way past the point now where like there is an understanding that all things being equal, the inclusion of sport of an athlete and that sort of emotional element, it adds a premium, adds an extra value to another place a sponsor could participate, whether it's entertainment or just buying organic ads or creating a campaign themselves with some other influencer. Like, is there that sports? Is there something that you guys need to even convey that there is a premium, or there is that emotional element, or is that just kind of like understood at this point?
Yeah, I think it's mostly the legitimacy
Mm-hmm.
that it brings, like the validation. So, having being the official partner of the LA Dodgers, there's something real about that. You're like, wow, like you've reached the big leagues kind of thing, right? I mean, that's why as startups, we all put like logos across our front because it's like we're all just seeking validation. And so I think if you're a product today, whether you're Walmart or a super small company, like having an athlete wear your product, eat your product, use your product, and being able to talk about that is legitimacy, being the official partner of your favorite team. And so there is this like connection for emotion, but I think you could argue you could do that without, right? You can create an amazing ad and put it out there, but it's the legitimacy as well that the athlete, the sport brings. And what that does is a great example is, Super Bowl ads. There's this company called Timu who did a Super Bowl ad this year that no one had heard of. And they are now blasting social media with ads, right? And now that you've seen them do a Super Bowl ad, you are probably more receptive to their Facebook ad, their Instagram ad. If you hadn't seen that, you would be like, what's this random company I've never heard of? So of course it's an expensive one, but it's just, if you just saw that ad on TV, like there's something about sports that makes it a bit more real.
Yeah, no, I think that legitimacy piece is real. And also, I love and we'll get more into this later in the interview, I'm sure, of how having strong organic placements or having strong integrations on the organic front, it boosts up the paid front. It makes the paid front work better because now you have that familiarity, you have that sort of initial touch point, and then it's sort of like you jab, to use Gary V, you kind of jab with the great organic content, and then the right hook comes when the ads come in. That's when you go for the conversion potentially. So I love that point. But I want to get a little bit of the origin story of open sponsorship. I mean, you're here, you're co-founder and CEO of a pretty cool tech platform that's in the space. So tell me, I guess, like what was like founding the company and what you saw as a gap in the industry. I mean, I know you mentioned like it's the Airbnb of X, and I think there was a time period where everyone was building like the Uber of X, the Airbnb of Y. But tell me like what problem you're looking to solve, and let's get into the weeds. I think building a business that we can learn a lot from what you guys had to go into to see like what sponsors wanted, what teams and athletes wanted, and what ultimately you guys arrived at.
Yeah, I think so the number one thing was that sponsorships, it's a massive industry, of course, but it feels it's quite often like that if you know it, you spend a lot, and if you don't know it, you're very much on the outside. And it's such a wonderful form of marketing that it makes sense to democratize it, right? Like every athlete in the Olympics wants to do deals.
Mm-hmm.
Every brand would love to do a deal with an Olympian. I categorically say if the budget was right and the fit was right. But most people don't do deals because they don't know where to start, how much it costs, what the ROI is, what the strategy. There's too many unknowns. So the kind of thesis behind open sponsorship is similar to, like I said, similar to Uber or similar to Airbnb, similar to like a LinkedIn recruiter. if you can like solve for the unknowns through some matching mechanism, then you can create fits, right? There's a brand who wants to pay $100 and there's an athlete who'll take that $100. There's a brand who wants to pay $50,000, but they need someone with over 1 million followers. There's an athlete with over 1 million followers, he'll take that money, right? And then there's a case of like, well, do the demographics fit? Does the personality fit and all of that? And so really it was applying a lot of like other dating's a great example, right? Like if you can find a husband online, you could definitely find a sponsor, right? And so that was really it. It was like taking other industries and seeing, well, what have they done right? How did they earn, how did they get insurances? How did they win trust? And putting those into the sponsorship industry through a platform.
How sophisticated was sponsorship then, and how sophisticated is it now? Like, I mean, you know the right questions to ask. We know the right questions to ask around. Is it the right audience? Like, do they work with the brands like this? Like, can we trust them? And is there a fit here? And does the rate match, what we should be asking? Like, was it kind of just a little bit of like, I know there's ROI in there somewhere, and this is our budget, and it fits, or was there a growing sophistication already, or is there a little bit of an education that you guys had to bring in to say, hey, you might think this is a great fit, but our platform actually puts data behind it?
Yeah, definitely at the beginning, it was a lot about like, what did they say? Like, are they into charities? Are they married? And we've got way more sophisticated, especially thanks to social media. So, we know their demographics. We can do some social listening on the athletes. Mm-hmm. So I'd say loads more. Like if you want virality, we can show you data on views. If you want to try and get sales, then you should be looking at like, click-through rates and things like that, right? So even what you look for might depend on your strategy. And so we've definitely got more evolved over time, and brands are getting more evolved because, as you said, like back in the day, it'd be like, cool, who does my boss like? My boss loves golf, let's sponsor a golfer. Then it became a bit like, all right, well, who uses my product? And now it's like, cool, well, is their audience aligned with my audience, and are their values aligned with my values? So as brands have got more sophisticated, we've definitely had to add in a lot more like levels of filters.
What are some of those factors that maybe we need to know about if we're working on the team, so working on this on the brand side even? Like, what are those things that maybe are very common that people want to look at that are part of the platform, and what are things that are a little more maybe nuanced that people don't think about as much?
Yeah, I'd say because a lot of people come to us having already done influencer marketing or like alongside of that, a lot of people are worried about like fake followers and fake, their social media not being like real. Yeah. And then you're just paying for like shit. So that's an important one. Happens a little bit less so with athletes, but still something to be wary of. Mm-hmm. And then the flip side of that is actually like there's a lot of athletes who don't post a lot on social, right? Their everyday job is not to make money through social media. Right. And so a brand doesn't want to work with someone and then they're like, oh shit, their last post was X, 6 months ago, because at the end of the day, the algorithms are all like always changing. So if you post a lot, and even we don't really know, I was at the NBA Tech Summit recently, and I think Mark Cuban was literally complaining. There was some senior exec from Meta on stage, and Mark Cuban, and he was like, we wish we knew what your algorithms were doing, because like we try and put things out there. And I think Michael Rubin of Fanatics was also saying the same thing. And so it's like, it's quite hard because as a brand, I'm literally paying you as an athlete to be a distribution channel. I'm paying you for content, and I'm paying you to be a distribution channel. So it's a bit annoying if everything changes and suddenly like I thought I was going to get like tens of thousands of views and now I got like 50. So there's a lot to think about, and some of it is to do with the athlete, and some of it's to do with like just the strategy of the platform as well.
Do you guys kind of see yourselves at like where do you fit in terms of optimizing the partnerships? Are you like just matchmaker and like, hey, once you guys get married, then our work is done. Good luck. Yeah. Are you like trying to feedback of like this kind of content works well for this brand based on the data we received, or this is like the algorithms are changing and favoring this a little bit more. You might get a little more bang for your buck if you do this, or do you guys not play in that realm of content optimization and recommendations, and it's more again just on the matchmaking service?
Yeah, so we were always like wanting to do the recommendation, and we always try to do it through tech. And then what we realized recently, probably in the last couple of years, was like the tech can only take, I mean, obviously with generative AI and all of this stuff, like maybe it'll get better, but ultimately it's really hard to predict through tech, like what is the best fit for you? Because like, is it funny? Is it serious? And it's all about you as a brand. And so in the last couple of years, we've really added services, like, services as like our team advising. And we've really found that that's what's needed because it's both sides. It's like, you might pick the right athlete, but then what do you get them to do? And it's even like there's such a big difference between making them do a reel or a story. A story has a click-through link. A reel doesn't, but a story disappears after 24 hours. So there's a huge level of like, ultimately, everyone's looking for success, some ROI. And a huge part of that is the strategy you take. And unfortunately, it can't be like a blanket for all.
Right.
So we've really realized in the last bit that like brands really need some support. And of course, like if athletes is a small part of their strategy, athletes might act very different to influencers. And so even though they have something for influencers, they might need something different for athletes. And so I'd say we've really found our home being like that advisory. So we're like the matchmaker plus the advisor afterwards on how to make it successful.
Is that like the fact that influencer marketing and athlete marketing are not apples to apples? Is that a misnotion at times? Is that something that people need to be disillusioned of? Like, hey, they're an influencer. They're an influencer that also plays sports on the side. Or is there a true difference in that? They have a season, they have another side job. They're not built to create content. I mean, I think nowadays we think about like the best way to work with an influencer is giving them the creative brief or give them the pitch, what you're trying to do, and then let them do their thing because they know their audience and they're good at creating content. Whereas the athlete, may not know quite as much or may rely on a team to do that stuff for them.
Yeah, and I think it's like that's the dip. Like if you want great UGC, we have a lot of athletes who are like snowboarders and outdoorsy guys and hikers and marathon runners, and they do produce great content. Yeah. And even, we've seen it even in all the leagues, like within the NFL, what's his DeAndre Hopkins, like love his content, right? And there's loads of people whose content is funny. It's like, Chad Johnson, hilarious, like in soccer as well. Like there are athletes who never post. And then there's like, who else do I follow? There's quite a few athletes that you're like, your content's great, right? And so people follow you for your content, but then they become like 5x the cost because then you're buying the brand name. And that's the other thing, like what's the ROI? So when they're great content creators and they play in the NBA or the NFL, you're paying a lot. So that's, again, like back to your point, Neil, like, yeah, you do have to change your mindset because you might turn around and be like, oh, but I can get someone for 1 million followers who's a mommy blogger for $10,000. And it's like, yeah, but they don't play in the NBA.
Right.
And then, but you can get that with us, but they're probably like an ultra marathon runner.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is, I wouldn't say it's completely different, but either the price goes up a lot when they are a household name and great content, or they're a household name, probably not great content, or they're great content, but not a household name. So it's like, which one do you want to do?
Yeah. And we certainly have seen an increase in leagues in general as well with their strategies of enlisting. I mean, I just heard from someone with the NFL about how they're really building up their creator network and inviting them to the field, inviting them to create content and co-create content. And we oftentimes there's a conversation around like, well, should we put all of our chips into bringing whatever, I'm going to show my age here, like bringing in a Olivia Rodrigo and giving her access, or bringing in a Jake Paul, or bringing in some giant influencer versus, well, I could have one person with 10 million followers, or I could have 100 people with 500,000 followers, whatever it might be. It's like when you're looking at what's happening on your platform, as well as just kind of what you would recommend from your your purview of an army of sort of micro influencers and nano influencers versus a few kingmakers, and I'm sure it depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard because I get it as a brand. You're like, well, if I spend 20K on this one post, is it going to do anything? But then it goes back to the point, which is, well, don't treat them as an influencer, treat them as an athlete, and then like get PR, get amplification, turn that one piece of content into 50 pieces of content, right? Like put that on your website. But it's all strategy, right? So it's definitely a difficult one, and that's probably like the hardest thing for marketplaces like ours, is you turn around and you think it's enough to be a matchmaker, and it's not. We definitely need to make sure that you're thinking about amplification, strategy, repurposing content in the best way, all of that stuff on the back end.
Yeah, I imagine like you might be able to like if you get 500,000 engagements from a single user versus 500,000 engagements from a group of 50 users, 50 influencers, 50 athletes, whatever it might be. I I don't know if those things are equal. Maybe they are, maybe they are. And maybe the fact that you have 50 athletes, you have a more diverse fan base. Then you might get more localized, more like closer. Have people have a closer relationship with them and take more action based on it. But also on the other side of the coin, maybe the single big person is easier to amplify, and you have more likelihood to have a snowball effect. Like I guess there's no right or wrong answer there, but like what are you seeing play out? Are you seeing any sort of trends of people going after bigger campaigns with more smaller athletes versus going after those bigger athletes? And also, like, I mean, another thing that's just kind of floating over here too is who's using your platform as well. Are the biggest athletes looking for that matchmaking service, or are they doing their own thing on the side with their own agents or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I'd say for us, it's the non-top 5%. So once
Mhm.
you hit that top five, you're talking millions of dollars just to say hello kind of thing.
Right.
Um, and at that point, you could probably go direct. And you've got a big agency or you've got the expertise in house, right? Below that non-top 5% is our sweet spot. So, deals are anywhere to like hundreds of thousands all the way down.
Mhm.
And I would say like there's a lot of demand for it. And when it comes to strategy, when it comes to which one, I really would say it's really up to the brand when a test budget is like, let's say it's 20K. Do you want one big guy? I would say a lot of people are going for like 5 times 5,
Mhm.
right? Kind of thing. And trying to get a bit more, hoping that one or two people work, double down there, take some learnings, and then keep going, right?
Yeah.
After that.
What role, if any, should the teams play? Should their employers play? Like, are they able to go and film on the field after practice, or is there something that has to be worked out with the team and the brand? I think we think this is becoming more and more of a topic in the team marketing side of, yeah, well, we want to ask this athlete to be part of our feature or for the sponsor content feature, but also like he has his own obligations to do on the side, and we may not be able to get all this time. Like, how are you seeing teams kind of cooperate, or sometimes they have additional obligations that kind of get in the way of what athletes trying to do at times?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually don't work with the teams closely at all. So, I mean,
Right, I wouldn't
pretty
think
good
so, but
idea there.
your athletes have to
Yeah.
by default.
I think the thing being is like the way that we do it is through the agent or the athlete direct. So we kind of really leave everything up to them. So they might be getting the teams to shoot that content when they do a deal. We're just we're just not really that involved on their side of
Right.
production. Again, because like the deals are not that big. So of course, like if it's a bigger deal and they're like the brand is paying for production, but a lot of these brands they want UGC, they want like homegrown content. So they're not like you must record it on the field or this. And mostly you can't do that, right? Because there's logos in the backgrounds, and
Yeah.
a lot of the brands that we work with, they're not official sponsors. So um yeah, I mean I don't really know how the teams feel about all the non-team endorsed brands deals that they do.
Super interesting to consider. I imagine like there's probably some database out there where you can see that here's all the official ex partners of the team, and therefore maybe an athlete works with someone who's not a partner of the team or competitor of one of the partners of the team, which would be an interesting exercise that could lead to some tough conversations sometimes. I want to touch base a little bit quickly on just the the actual activation aspect of it, and the fact that you guys are sitting on so much data. Is it a math equation essentially where like if a user has this many followers, or even if it's not just based on the individual user level, where a story is worth X percentage that an in-feed post is worth, which is worth less than a reel, less than more than an in-feed post. Like, is it just a matter of equations? Like, and what are the most valuable real estates that you see play out? All things being equal when it comes to followers and average engagement and whatnot.
Yeah, I think I'd like to say it was really formulaic. I think you can set price as pretty formulaic, But what the brand is willing to pay is often not as formulaic. Like I was speaking to one of our clients today, and he was saying how it's like I really look at like when was the last time they post, and is it good quality? Does it fit with my brand? If it's a steal, then fine, but I'm not going to offer this. It's not. So I think there's a lot more
Yeah.
brands wanting to like make sure it's the right fit than just like, oh, this is a good price. Like, let's go. There is a little bit of that, but not as much. So it's quite odd. And again, like recently, we've heard a lot more people talking about cost per view, but that's if you want brand awareness. Because,
Mhm.
as you know, with Reels, I'm sure, like we have 16,000 followers on Instagram, and we have some Reels that will have like 30K followers,
Right.
30K views. And it's like, that didn't used to happen, right? Your engagement was a percentage of your following. But
Mhm.
now, and what do you care about the virality, or do you care about like them following you? And so there's just like a lot to think about depending on your strategy. And I do think for a lot of brands it kind of changes. Like they might care about this, they tick that one off, then they care about this, tick that one off, and they probably go more lower funnel, right? So they're top of funnel awareness. Then they're like, all right, convert. Then they're like, okay, we need sales. So it's a bit of a journey funnel.
I wanted I have multiple questions I want to ask off that because I'm just geeking out here with you, Ishveen. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
When I've kind of we kind of seen the convolution of the follower. I mean, I think TikTok came along and everyone's like, wait, this person can have 25 followers and get like 1 million views on a single TikTok. It's this whole notion of the For You feed and stuff being fed to you. Like, is the follower count? I think it's still very important, and people still look at it, especially when it comes to sponsor value and such. But is it lessening and is it diminishing in importance and at the expense of what? At the expense of average views in general, average views on your previous branded content, average engagements. Is engagement still the be all end all? Is even the ability to prove that you can convert something that's coming into the equation for athletes? I probably not too many of them. Like where are we at in terms of the metrics that matter, and do followers still matter as much as they did 3, 4, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I don't think they do matter as much. I think they are still important because it's a signature of your like popularity. The followers is like how many people follow you, so that is still important. But if if what I'm looking for is for you to do 1 to 3 posts for me, what does it matter about your following? Um, I'm probably more interested in one, your content being right for me, the vibe of your content. Um, Second, I probably look at your sponsored content to see like, well, how do you do? There's a lot of people who are great when it's their own, and then you put them with a brand and they just don't care. So you want to look at that. And then third would be what we talked about, the engagement, right? Ideally, it's the engagement for companies like me, but that's obviously really hard. And so it's probably some sort of like engagement on sponsored posts or engagement anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we talk about this a bit too in the space in general of social media is really good at accomplishing some goals, not as good at other goals. I think like you talk about the fact that there's such a diversity of brands that use open sponsorship from the big name brands that have all the big budgets in the world, and you might have like the I always like to say like Bob's Pizza down the street just wants to push a 2 for 1 coupon for everyone that's in the area, fan of the team. Like are you seeing more and more like brand awareness campaigns that are just looking for that general views and impressions and those kind of not vanity level metrics, but the metrics that may not be able to have a direct tie to the bottom line? And then like what does it look like to move down that funnel of what is it? Test drives for an auto dealer? Is it lead gen for I don't know, an insurance company? Or is it easier to show that ROI, that conversion piece, for those more CPG QSRs that you can go out and buy a burger tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so top of funnel still really matters because people, like you say, vanity metrics, but they're not because they're like how many people viewed your brand, how many people interacted with your brand is really important. So top of funnel is still very alive and kicking. That's where it works best with influencers and athletes.
Mhm.
As you go in bottom funnel, yeah, you can do like giveaways, right? Like you could do like drive to a website landing page, sign up for this
Yeah.
competitions, put your email, you might win something, tag some friends, etc. And then of course, like bottom of funnel is literally like purchase this product,
Right.
put my name in as coupon code, my name, Olympics, whatever, 20 and get 20% off, right? So it and as I said, like brands go up and down in different needs, right? So sometimes it might be more brand awareness, and then sometimes they're like, well, we're really pushing sales.
Yeah. When you guys think about the brands that, and even just how you're marketing, are you marketing open sponsorship as like the best solution? Are you marketing the value of athlete sponsorships at times? Are you marketing like, I'm trying to think about, because you have a two-sided marketplace. You are trying to, get athletes to join the platform, of course. You're trying to get brands to come to the platform. So what's it look like for you guys day to day of conveying the value of the service, conveying the value of given athletes? Like, are you almost like showcasing some success stories and like, here's a great athlete success story that can trying to find that sweet spot that can appeal to both, and like, and what can we learn from what brands want to see when it comes to attracting them?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination of everything. So we market our athletes and how great they are, right? So we market how many Olympians we have, or like, Formula One just started. So these are and then we'll market our deals. So, here's a deal we did with Alex Albon, here's a deal we did with the USA soccer team. And then we're also we're trying to remind you of like tentpole moments, right? So, hey, Father's Day, Mother's Day, and Father's Day around the corner. Are you thinking about using athletes back to school? Are you thinking about using athletes? So I'd say it's a combination of lots of different things to hit the brand where they might hear it.
Yeah. Let's touch on kind of alongside that, the sort of, I'm going to use this analogy as whether it works or not, around like the sort of the Tinder nature of the platform potentially. I want to look for someone that I can do a deal with, and we can get a big boost for International Women's Month or whatever, for Easter, or whatever the campaign might be. Kind of putting a timestamp on this podcast now, versus more like Hinge. We're trying to find someone that you want to stay with and maybe work with for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or become lifelong partners. Like, what are most brands coming to you looking for that Tinder hit it and quit it type experience, or are they? Is there a place for an open sponsorship to find those longer term marriages?
I mean, we love long term. They definitely happen lesser than the short term, as you can imagine. And then there's a lot of like people doing short term as a test, and if it works out, then they turn it into long term. So both are very possible. And to be honest, there are athletes who would never do short term because they care about their brand too much or how many partners they have. And then there are lots of athletes who will definitely do short term because they love the product and they're like, you know what, hey, Levi's, I love you, and I'll do a one-off deal because you're a great brand, right? But they might not do. So it's not always like black and white, because they might do a short-term deal with a brand they love, who frankly wouldn't really do a long-term deal as much. And they might not do a long-term deal that for supplements, they might only do a long-term deal because it's a category that is more long-term in its nature.
No, that makes a lot of sense for sure. What have you seen? Like, I think as we have seen NIL grow in the college athletic space. I've seen some college athletes who are like literally speaking into existence. Like, I want to get a deal with this brand because I love their products. And other times, we're seeing just more volume out there, but essentially, and more athletes that can be available to work with. And like, as we get more and more, I guess, crowded in the space, is that driving interest and rates up? Is it driving rates down because supply is increasing so much? Just the basic economics, like with the influx of NIL and with and frankly even the continued growth of women's sports all over the world, and you have more leagues, more star athletes out there. Like, what are you seeing overall from the overall sports sponsorship, sports marketing space as again the supply sort of grows?
It's hard to say, is it going down or up, because it's changing so much, because there's so many more dollars coming into influencer marketing, right? It's one of the fastest growing marketing channels out there. So you're seeing more deals, but are they actually going down in value because of college sports? I'm not sure. I'd say there is like the price has been corrected. So just because you're a college athlete, if you have 10,000 followers, you're not going to make thousands of dollars because brands want to support college athletes, right? You're going to make market value, and that could be quite low. And so I think there's a lot of athletes who've also come in and gone, I'm not really that bothered about making $100.
Yeah,
I'd rather have my social media feed just be mine. Like, and then there are some athletes who are like, I love this. This is a good income and it's also fun. So there's 500 and whatever, 567,000 college athletes or something. There's not that many doing deals, like,
True.
and there's not that many brands. So, it's hard to say the impact of college, because you could also argue it's grown the market because it's brought more awareness to athletes. So we have a lot of brands who come in and they're like, we're interested in college. And then they're like, actually, but we'd also quite like to do pro and retired and everything else. So there's more eyeballs on the athlete sponsorship market as a whole. Of course, there's more supply, but I think there's more awareness as well.
That's a great insight. A few minutes left with Ishveen Jolly, co-founder and CEO of Open Sponsorship. This time is just flying by, Ishveen. We're not going to get to everything I want to talk about. We're going to get to a couple more things. I want to talk about platforms. I mean, it seems like there's a new platform feature. We talked a little about the ever-changing nature of algorithms, but as Threads comes about, and I don't think too many athletes are really big on Threads yet necessarily. And you have, more and more athletes are getting on YouTube. More and more athletes are getting on LinkedIn. Certainly, more and more are getting their own TikTok feeds and TikTok accounts. When a new platform comes along, like, how do you guys think about it? How do brands tend to think about it? Is it an opportunity for you guys to really plug in and get the technology set as quickly as possible? Because then you can be that sort of testing ground. Hey, come and try a LinkedIn sponsorship with an athlete, or a Thread sponsorship, whatever it might be. Again, I'm a little bit skeptical that Threads is already mature at that point here. But what's it like from your guys' view when a new platform comes about and it becomes a potentially monetizable platform for the athlete brand sponsorship?
Yeah, I think it's as I said, like, you're trying to get the brand the ROI, the best ROI. If they've already worked with that athlete to try new platforms, quite interesting. But a lot of our brands are coming to us for like a new athlete, or they've not really done athletes, right?
Mm-hmm.
To test out a new platform with a new athlete, like marketing, you shouldn't really ever change more than one variable.
Yeah.
So if a brand is like, you know what, I sell really well on YouTube, don't come to us and start doing TikTok. Like, unless you're like, I do well with athletes on YouTube, and now I'm going to do well with those same athletes on TikTok, but then they're probably not using us because if they already have those athletes, right? So we might pick up an athlete and they're like, oh, I love this athlete. And then we might say, cool, let's turn this into a longer term deal and test their other channels as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big fan of like, hey, LinkedIn just got on loads of athletes, let's do that. Unless the brand says themselves, LinkedIn is a tool we use.
No, that's a really interesting perspective. So, is there almost like an opportunity for athletes to get on less crowded grounds? Like, if I'm an athlete today, starting from scratch, and I have, I'm whatever, a first team All-American out of high school, and I can really, and I'm going to crush in college. Like, maybe I don't go all in. Maybe I go all in on YouTube and YouTube Shorts because it's less crowded there versus on Instagram where there's going to be more and more athletes there. So a brand if a brand comes in, they want to look at YouTube, they want to look at TikTok, they want to look at LinkedIn as a place to activate. But is there that kind of arbitrage opportunity now where athletes can sort of be where it's less crowded right now, or is that not really a big concern?
No, I think they can be as long as there are brand dollars there, right? So YouTube is a big avenue for brands to spend. Not many athletes are there, so that's great. I've never heard any client say we want to sell through Threads. So it would not make sense to be on Threads because no brand is looking to activate on Threads.
Yeah. So you really have to understand where the brand dollars are first and build your brand appropriately.
If you're doing it for that reason, now if you just love Threads, of course go for it. But if you're doing it for brand dollars, then yeah, go where the brand dollars are.
A couple quick hitters here before we do the shareable stat. I promise we'll move on. I just keep you all day here. But are you seeing? I mean, is the narrative following what you're seeing with women's sports? Are female athletes? I think it kind of goes out saying most of the women tend to over-index on influencers. They do a good job, and women athletes tend to do a better job with content creation than the average male athlete. Just from speaking in generalities, are you seeing an increase in the number of viable women's athletes and in the level of interest in women's athletes when it comes to brands coming on the platform?
100%. So, for a number of reasons. One, it brings a whole new set of brands in, right? Brands focused on selling to women. So that's huge. Second is often like women make really good content, right? They
Yeah.
put a bit more effort in, so that's kind of cool. And then third is like there's a little bit of the CSR, like it's good to support women, but frankly, they produce really great results. Like the engagement of the USA soccer team is amazing. Again, probably because like women probably use social media a bit more, right? So
Yeah.
therefore, you're targeting a set of people who use social media more and engage with it more. So for all the reasons, like everything good reasons, obviously, for sure, we do a lot of deals with our female athletes.
Yeah. And it's been cool to see how you think back a couple of years when like Ally Financial was really big and like supporting the NWSL among others. And it was like the whole narrative, which is really cool and really true, is like get in now because it's only going to get more expensive and more costly because people are just starting to realize this is an underpriced asset or undervalued opportunity to get in with women's sports. And I mean, it still is undervalued, underpriced, underappreciated. So it's still that time to get in, but it's growing quickly. And we're seeing it play out all the time here.
Yeah, absolutely.
One last thing with episode shareable stat, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about it because I just am a geek when it comes to this stuff as well. And that is just what's it like running a startup or running a tech company? Like, are you a kind of a tech geek yourself? Do you have to understand how things work and like how much do you pay attention to the marketplace and to the greater trends in sports? Are you more looking at what's happening with the social platforms, what's happening with influencer marketing? Like, what's it like running a business, Ishveen?
Yeah, I think I enjoy it. I think it's about solving problems every day, and you turn up to work not knowing, and these could be small problems, and they can be huge problems, right? And so you have to be resilient. And so my traits are quite good for running a company. I enjoy it, but obviously it's very hard. And I think it's less about like, am I really, I started the company because I was very passionate about our mission. I keep doing it because I'm still passionate about the mission, but I can handle what running a company throws. I think there are many people who give up, not because they lose the passion for the mission, but it's just very hard to get it done.
No doubt. Well, my hat's off to you. You do a great job running the company, and it's a great product. And really look forward to continue to see it play out. But we're gonna stick around with you. We're gonna have some more fun in our quick pitch segment. But first episode shareable stat coming up right now. Awesome stuff. Really enjoyed going down rabbit holes and thinking about really interesting questions, big picture questions about what teams can care about when it comes to social, what brands are looking for in sponsorship, new platforms, metrics, different goals and objectives. Just really interesting stuff. Stick around though. We're gonna have some more fun with Ishveen, more good insights and stories in our quick hit segment. Quick pitch this time. But first episode shareable stat. This episode shareable stat comes from a recent benchmarks report by Rival IQ. They do this every year now, annual benchmarks for a bunch of different verticals, industries, including sports teams being a standalone category, give you benchmarks on all of the major social media platforms for those industries. And the one I'm going to share with you today is about TikTok, but certainly go and look at the full thing. You can get benchmarks for every single platform pretty much out there. But the benchmark today for TikTok for sports teams is engagement rate up 4.43%. 4.43% is the average engagement rate, the benchmark for sports teams that Rival IQ studied for TikTok. And the average team puts out around 2.4 new videos per week. So think about where you lie in that. It's a good area to think about when you want to be above those benchmarks. Of course, it may differ by sport, it may differ by the performance of your team, it may differ by the size of your overall audience. If you just naturally have a bigger brand or maybe blew up with a few videos. That's the thing we talked about briefly in the interview with Ishveen is the changing value of followers and what it means compared to what your actual views are and what your engagement is too. How does it have views versus engagement versus maybe especially as TikTok goes toward longer videos, will you start to value watch time more and retention of a given user, knowing they're spending more time to brand, seeing the full video, seeing the full message. But really interesting about lots of different metrics to think about when it comes to TikTok, when it comes to any social media platform, of course. But with TikTok coming on the way, with short form content really jacking up those views early on, and the opportunity to reach beyond your followers. Another thing too that came up in that interview with Ishveen is the value of reaching followers versus the value of reaching an audience that is attracted to your content, and what that difference may mean for a team, for a brand, for an organization. But that's a social shareable stat. I won't go much longer. Again, check out the full benchmarks from Ravel IQ. This is not sponsored in any way. I just like seeing benchmarks, industry standards. For sports teams, average on TikTok, 4.43% engagement, 2.4 videos per week. All right, that's a social shareable stat. Stick around, though, for more with Ishveen Jolly, Open Sponsorship. Back from Social Shareable Stat, and I'm joined once again by Ishveen Jolly. She is co-founder and CEO of Open Sponsorship. Ishveen learned so much in our interview portion. Are you now ready for some quick pitches?
Sure.
All right, number one. We didn't talk about it too much, but you did play competitively in sports. Tell me your most memorable game from your competitive athletic career.
I was captain of our cricket team at Keble, Oxford, and a big part of cricket is like getting 11 people to turn up on a Sunday morning. And so the feat was to try and get 11 girls to show up on a Sunday morning after like big Saturday nights out, and we managed that, which was epic because I think it was just fun to make sure everyone comes together. And then the second is that the quality was all over the place, and so I won't go into too many details, but it was just a really funny game. And people just getting involved even though they hadn't probably played before, and then some people who were great. So it was my first ever time being captain of the women's cricket team. There was definitely memorable.
Awesome. Do student athletes in the UK just look at college sports in the States and are just like, is it a completely foreign concept that like college athletes in the States are superstars?
Yeah, but also like they're there to play sport. We decide to play sports after the studies are first. So it's a big difference. Yeah.
Totally. Number two, tell me the first deal ever booked through Open Sponsorship, and also the most memorable or particularly uniquely memorable one.
Yeah, I don't remember the first deal. So I'll go with like one of my first memorable ones was a deal between Glassdoor and Draymond Green. I think that was like the first time we did a bigger athlete deal. And it was just really fun. Performed really well for them, and it was just really fun to say we worked with Draymond Green.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm like picturing you guys like high-fiving when that deal officially closed. Like, hell yeah, we did this. That's awesome. Number three, tell me the most important lesson you've learned so far in your time as an entrepreneur.
I would say keep upskilling, and try and be patient. So entrepreneurs naturally are quite like obviously impatient people. That's why we start businesses and we want to get shit going. But not to run a company, there has to be a balance of like who you are plus working with everyone around you. So whether it's clients, whether it's team, whether it's investors, just be patient. Not everyone goes at your pace. And then the flip side of that is be resilient, probably because you have to be patient with everyone.
No, that's great to take to heart, and that rings home true for me as well. Number four, tell me if a brand starts using this Open Sponsorship platform, what's the number one tip you would give to brands using the platform? That can be taken a lot of ways. Like, make sure to look for this or try to do this.
Yeah, I think to be honest, today, ironically, given we talk about the platform, I'd say today, if they have the budget, I would be using our full service team. I think having the strategy is the number one game changer behind working with athletes. I think too many people try and just do it alone, and you need the help for whatever that means.
I like that a lot. If we use our dating app analogy, it's like you might be able to get the date, but you might need some help closing the deal or you're doing well on the date. I'm going too far down that analogy. All right, number five. This will be a fun one. Tell me the most memorable sporting event you've ever attended.
Oh gosh, there's been a lot. Given an American audience, I'd say Super Bowl. Which one? Probably, obviously, a Super Bowl big part is the halftime show. So I got to see that Shakira
Nice.
and J-Lo and Pitbull performed, and that was amazing.
Wow, that is incredible experience. That's awesome. Number six, tell me of the athlete whose brand building or social media presence most impresses you and why.
Um, well, I think I said DeAndre Jordan earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's funny, individualist, interesting.
Mhm.
I like funny people. I think it's great.
Totally. I think every athlete should like hire either a really funny friend or a comedian on the side just to help them with like with writing a copy or creating a content. Number seven, this would be a kind of follow-up to that a little bit, or not maybe not follow, but tell me your favorite insight about just the greater athlete and or social media marketing space that has come from your time with sponsorship. What's something that just that you know that everyone else should know based on your experience and time there?
I think being authentic, like I think it's really hard to um like fake something. So like we talked about being funny. Like if you're not funny and then you do a couple of posts about being funny and then you just stop, like it's a bit weird. Like so if you are great at training videos, just do training videos. There's especially when you think about like your fans will follow you for the right reason and brands will work with you for the right reason. So whoever you are, if you love hanging out with your kids, post about it. If you like whoever you are, ideally that should come across on social media because then it will be easy for you to keep it up.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the best thing is when you see an athlete and brand sponsorship post and you're like, that makes sense. Like when you don't have to think about it. It just blends in well. And that's the best thing I say about authenticity. All right. It's time for our food question number eight for you, Ishveen. Tell me the best meal to get in New York and where to get it. And also, if I go to the UK, what is the meal I should have there? So best meal to get in New York,
Mm-hmm.
where to get it, and the meal everybody should have in the UK.
Yeah, I love this restaurant in Hell's Kitchen called Pio. It was a Peruvian place. So go there and there's like a chicken and a rice fish dish that's amazing. So that would be my New York one. And then in the UK, I'd say if you can go up north and have fish and chips with gravy, it's like the best.
There we go. Classic fish and chips. Gotta love it. Number nine, tell me the most prominent sport whose athletes are crushing it on open sponsorship that may surprise us. What's like we all know American football, we know soccer, we know basketball. Is there a sport that's like, oh, their athletes really crush it?
Yeah, a lot of the like the martial arts or like fighting sports, so like we do well with WWE or like former WWE. We did a
Wow.
deal recently
Yeah.
with Ric Flair. And again, like they're actors, right? They're natural content creators. Like that's what they did. UFC, inexpensive, very loyal following. Again, like they kind of perform.
Totally.
So those are definitely doing really well. And then outdoor, like hunting, fishing, hiking, all of these like outdoorsy sports again like natural content creators universal loyal following that kind of thing.
No, I love that. That's a great response there. All right, and last one for you, Ishbeen. Tell me from a global perspective, the sport whose stock you'd most want to invest in today. What is that sport like? I'm gonna buy it today because the value is not where it's gonna be in a few years.
um I think tennis could get stronger. I think it relies too much on the grand slams, and if they figure it out, I think it's loved but people watch the grand slams, so
Yeah,
assuming that they assuming that stuff happens, I think tennis.
I like that one a lot. We can go a lot of avenues there, but I think tennis is a good one for sure. All right, Yasmin, you had a great time. Our quick pitch. We have accepted your deal offer. Now your chance to shout out someone on the podcast. Tell us your social media all-star followers. Tell us who they are, what platform they're on, and why they're worth following.
Oh, that's a good question. Um, well, I probably would have to give it ode to my own team that have
Mhm.
been working really, really hard on our social. So we recently picked up a new content creator who have their own channel, but they're doing a lot with ours, and we're trying to make a lot of our content very educational. And so would love for like people to check it out and give us feedback because I think, as a company, it's always really hard to balance. Like you're not just obviously we sell a product, but you kind of want your social media to be interesting and educational and cool. and not just about your product. So I'm going to say my own team for their hard work. So yeah.
There we go. And just
That's loud.
at open sponsorship on most platforms. Is that where we can find you guys?
Yeah.
Great. And how about yourself, Ish? I mean, where can we find you on personal platforms, or LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram? Where are you active?
Yeah, most of those. Whichever, whichever, everywhere.
Awesome. Well, check out their content, which is growing and getting even better all the time. But more importantly, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We appreciate your knowledge, your insight, your experience. The sports sponsorship space is continuing to grow and getting more sophisticated every day. And you are right there in the center of it. So really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Neil. So much fun.
Thanks so much again to Ishveen Jolly, co-founder and CEO of Open Sponsorship. Really enjoyed the conversation. She is very much involved in the industry, sees it up close day to day when it comes to athletes and brands and monetizing social media and where that's all heading. Just some really interesting insight into the trends playing out, the sports that are on the rise, what brands are looking for. And thanks so much again to Ishveen for coming on the podcast today, giving us some of her time and insight. But that was an episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. Hit me up on LinkedIn or on Twitter. And you can also find the podcast, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. But until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.